Hey everybody, welcome back to Vanta EDC. Today I'm gonna be sharing the knives that I've been EDCing on some basis, or I guess how from least to most carrying. So yeah, it's been a while since I've done something of this nature, like an EDC type update, just with my own personal carry. And really, a lot of my gear has not changed, but aside from the knives, but the knives for sure has changed a lot in the last few months because of a few really big knife pickups. So yeah, I'll just go through from the least carried to most carried in the last few months or so, and kind of share some kind of developments in my own sort of approach to knives and EDC knives in particular. So the knife that I've been carrying the least, surprisingly, is this one. The Quiet Carry Drift, the second version, the one with thumb studs in Vanex steel. This is I very recently did a 6 month update, or like a 6 month review. So I've had this for over 6 months now, and it's a great knife. Just because it's the least carried doesn't diminish how good of a knife it is by any means, but not for reasons that not for shortcomings of this knife, but just because of honestly getting a lot of newer knives. This has taken a back seat because the biggest use case for me of having for the drift was like a hard use knife, not worrying about corrosion, having pretty good overall blade performance, and being on washers in particular as well, just not worrying about the action getting gunked up. But as you'll see with later knives, I've gotten knives that kind of fit that niche, but they're larger. And, I think part of it is just the newness of having or the thing of having new knives and wanting to carry those, but also maybe finding myself wanting and kind of finding more utility out of larger knives. So yeah, this has gotten the least amount of carry out of all these in front of you, but it's still a knife that I plan on keeping. I'm actually really wanting to get the large version of this because I think that could be in a way replace the oops, I almost dropped that. Could replace this is a G10 version, so it's like a liner lock black G10, and it's only a 3-inch blade. So this is a very much like a compact EDC knife, and kind of represents a lot of things that early on in my knife collecting and knife enthusiasm that I really appreciated in knives, and I still do to some degree. But I think growing in my appreciation of other aspects of different knives. So yeah, least carried. Second least carried is this one, the CJRB Echo, particularly this Knife Center exclusive with the black micarta scales and the titanium bolster. It has stainless liner, but yeah, this is a great knife. I still think one of the best budget EDC knives, budget button lock knives, best budget gentleman knives, you name it, just any budget category. I think it hits really hard in that tier. Really super fidgety, so it's just a knife that I enjoy being able to just fidget with endlessly. So many different ways to deploy, and yeah, there's the blade profile very utilitarian. This is a very nice. I think it's a belt grind. I don't know. This one's kind of hard to tell. I guess it's some sort of belt grind. But yeah, it's a great overall knife and design. Ray Laconico design, just converted into a button lock by CJRB. So also, this is probably out of all the knives here, I guess it's like the third oldest that I have. That is shown here. I have older knives, but in terms of what I have in front of you guys, these are really the only knives I've been carrying lately. So yeah, this is one of the older knives, and again, like that pursuit of having like the ideal EDC button lock. This kind of is in the right direction, I guess you could say, for me, the things that I want out of a EDC button lock. So this is a great knife. I just haven't been carrying it for, again, getting newer knives. Okay, fifth least carried, or I guess the fifth most carried now. We can just go ahead and say that has been the Tactile Rockwall. Now, I've had this now for nearly a year. I think I got it January at the beginning of 2023, January 2023. So it's been 10 full months now into the 11th month of owning this knife. And for the longest time, I wouldn't say I was afraid to carry it, but more just saved it to carry on very special occasions, because for a long time this was my most expensive knife. It's a very rare knife. It's the Urban EDC Supply exclusive with this Workerman Sagaiha engraving. And so, in case, if you're watching this video, you probably know, but in case you haven't heard about Tactile, Tactile Knife Co., their USA produced knives. This is MagnaCut, albeit in kind of a softer Rockwell hardness than maybe a lot of people would consider optimal. And so this was a knife for a long time that I just let sit in its box or like in my safe because I didn't want to risk losing it. I didn't really feel like using it much. I just wanted to treat it as I guess you could say, like a very classy gentleman's carry, special occasions like date nights, that sort of thing. So I've been carrying it a little more recently because, notice compared to all these other knives, by far, this is by far the most compact, by far the most gentlemanly of all these. And so, certain pants that I wear, this is just slips right in, and it basically it's not invisible, but it's by far the most by far the least obtrusive or noticeable in pocket. So it's great. It's very much kind of like a letter opener style knife. So it's not something that you'd want to cut through a bunch of cardboard with necessarily, but it definitely can open letters and packages whatnot very easily. Very thin blade stock. So when I first got this, this was a grail for me at the time when I got it. I can say now I still appreciate a lot of things about this knife, but yeah, my tastes have evolved, and I've found a lot of other aspects or a lot of other types of knives very appealing as well. Not to say that this has necessarily lost its appeal, but yeah, it just doesn't hold the same place it did when I first got it. So I'm sure a lot of you can relate in some respect. The fourth most carried. So this is where it starts really getting tricky to some degree. It's kind of a toss-up between these two. And I'll probably... okay, so at this point it's kind of like a wash between these two, but let's go with the Umnumzaan. So the Umnumzaan I've had for a little bit longer. I think I got it back in... when was that? September? Maybe September is when I got it. And yeah, this was a knife that I got specifically to have a true lifelong tool, hard use knife. So this is a MagnaCut Tanto Umnumzaan, 3.68 inch or 3.6 something inch blade, full titanium scales, no milling, frame lock. It's got the thumb studs that serve as external stops as well. And so, in case you've watched my previous videos with this, my initial impressions, and then my 1 month review, I have changed a few things, which I mentioned I would. I changed the factory clip because it's garbage and I hate it. You'll very seldom hear me express very strong opinions like that. It's slight dramatization, but yeah, it's not a good clip. But I think it's this RGT, or is that right? Rips Garage Tech. Yeah, this is like the bead or sandblasted titanium clip. Notice, so I haven't adjusted the tension at all. There's actually some clearance between the clip and the lock bar when the knife is closed, and even more so, I guess, when it's open. But so far, I'm not too worried about that. I'm not too concerned. In fact, like the fact that it's not applying tension to the lock bar has made this more appealing because I think the factory clip applies a decent amount of tension directly onto the lock bar, and so yeah. This knife is not a fidgety knife in the most stereotypical sense, but for me, it's very fidgety. It's a very addictive, appealing knife to be able to fidget with because of the action. So this is on very, very sizable phosphor bronze washers that are, what is the term that they use? There's basically holes throughout the washer, perforated, I think is what they call them, perforated bronze washers. And so, when I first got this out of the box, it was smooth but stiff at the same time. Like you could tell there's a decent amount of friction, but now it is super smooth. Just the fact that you can't really hear much when you're opening and closing the blade in terms of from the action. It is just super smooth. Like I can even, if I push the lock bar far, see, I can get it to drop onto my thumb with it, and it's not so sharp at the base of the blade that it's cutting into my thumb. But yeah, this knife is really, because of the action, the tightness of the tolerances, it's just a very, addicting knife for me to open and close, even though it's not the most comfortable. And I've explained that in my 1 month review and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, honestly, more so than anything, when I first got it, I was carrying it a lot, like out of the house. But now that I've had it for over a month, mainly I just, when I'm sitting around at home, this is a knife that I honestly probably one of the 3 or 4 knives that I want to just be fidgeting with when I'm just sitting around at my desk or on the couch or something like that. So yeah, this is and this is definitely, this is my knife anytime I'm doing yard work, doing any sort of like labor around the house. This is my go-to knife. I'm not trying to baby this, although it's tempting to. And I'll be going on some outdoors type trips in the near future, so this will definitely be the one that I take with me. Probably take another knife as well, but this will be kind of like the primary carry on those trips. So yeah, this is top 4, top 3, because the other one being the Les George VECP button lock. I'm about to say Rockeye, the VECP button lock. And so I haven't had it for a full month yet, but I will be recording a 1 month review very shortly. So I guess you get a little preview of that. But this knife surprised me so much because this is a knife on washers, and the smoothness of that action is arguably smoother than any knife I own. And I would say like smoother, and it is, I mean, it's not drop shutty in a sense because it's a button lock, but just as soon as you what do you call it, disengage the button, it just goes. So it's just amazing how smooth an action this is, given that it's on washers. I would say this is probably the next kind of, or the other most smooth knife that I own. The Null Knives Voodoo, I'll get more into it in a second because it's in the top 5 carried knives. But yeah, back to the VECP button lock. So this is a button lock. It's titanium magna cut. I believe the Les George website says 63 HRC. It's got this very, very standard in a way looking drop point blade, this nice thumb ramp, very large index finger choil on the handle. I wouldn't say this is a perfect knife because it definitely is not. At least the version or the copy that I got, there are some flaws or things that could definitely be improved. But far and away, the thing that is surprising to me about this is how smooth the action is. And even though it is a heavy knife, it's over 5 ounces. I believe the blade is around 3.5 inches. It doesn't feel like a brick, number one. And number two, it's it's thick. I think it's the Unumzon is, what is it? Sorry, if you notice my hand's trembling, especially my left hand. I injured my hand recently. So yeah, the Unumzon is actually surprisingly thin for how heavy duty of a knife it is. The VECP is a little thicker, especially in the scales, and the blade stock's a tiny bit thicker. But yeah, this is just so addictive. And you'll notice that I also installed the person that I got this from, I guess threw in a free Lynch Northwest like Benchmade style clip, and so this is a good deep carry clip. But yeah, so this is just a knife that is just so addictive to fidget with, which is honestly a big thing that I do with my knives. I fidget more than I cut anything. So you probably hear this. There's a lot of button stick. So that's one of the big flaws of this knife. I don't know if that's every one of these, but mine has a lot of button stick. So that is not something that I love. But in spite of that, I do love this knife a lot because of just how smooth this action is. It feels very strong and hefty. The blade is surprisingly slicey. It's got a fairly high flat grind, and the edge that it came with very sharp. So yeah, this has been another one that I've been fidgeting a lot with, carrying a lot, as long as I'm not wearing like really, really light, like basketball type shorts or something like that. This is a go-to because just how fidgety it is. It also feels very strong. And I know that button locks are by far not the strongest locking mechanism for a folding knife, but for me, there's very few things where I'm testing the limits of a knife's strength. So yeah, this has been like top 3, top 4 most carried knives. Now, this one surprised me in a way. The next one, the second most carried. Well, see, this will get interesting. I could argue that it's a toss up of most and second most carried between these two. Now, the caveat being, I carry this a lot specifically at home. Now, amongst kind of so basically these four are the newest knives: the Umnumzan, the VCP button lock, the Para 3, the Voodoo. These are the four newest to me out of the ones that you see in front of you, and so these are by far getting more carry than these three. And amongst these four, this is by far the smallest and lightest. So this just is really easy to throw in my pocket because I wear shorts or sweatpants. I just wearing, comfortable lounge type wear around the house. And, other things that have been really pleasant surprise about this, because really, in a way, I got this so that I could have something with these Mexican Blanket Especial micarta scales. That was really like, this is one of the most, if not the most, customized modified knives in the knife community. And so I was able to get these scales, and I got this knife on sale for I think it was like the annual Spyderco sale at Blade HQ or something like that. So this has been, I wasn't expecting to like it or carry it a bunch, more so just have it as kind of like a collection piece because of the scales. But having polished the washers, and this knife is just, and again, this is a washer knife and not a bearings knife. When I first got into knives, all I thought was bearings are the way. That was just my way of thinking, in my naivete. And of course, getting to experience knives that either by breaking them in or just from the factory, just so smooth. It's to me, it's a much more satisfying sort of opening and closing than knives that are on bearings, because it just has that glassy feel, which, very, very, very cliche description, but, I can't think of a better one, at least off the top of my head, to just describe just the smoothness of the action. And yeah, and knowing that there's a lot less probability of the action getting gunked up by, pocket lint and whatever, I don't know, cardboard dust and goo from whatever you're cutting through. This has been just really addictive, and the fact that it's a compression lock, so it's not a button lock, but it kind of serves in my head, or kind of in my hands, I should say, feels similar to a button lock because it's very easy to fidget with, open and close. My fingers aren't at risk of getting chopped off when I'm fidgeting very kind of fast and fidgeting very mindlessly, I guess you could say. So yeah, for a lot of reasons, this is let's say my second most carried, specifically in the house. Now, I would say the most carried knife, just in general / outside the house, is the Knoll Knives Voodoo, which when I got it, I guess I didn't know, I didn't have much expectation in a way. Did I? I can't remember what I was expecting out of it. I'd have to go back and watch my initial impressions video. But, this knife is, so many good things about this knife. And that sounds like I'm about to say something bad, but no, I'm not. But yeah, this knife, it just checks so many boxes for me. And I think it probably checks a lot of boxes for a lot of enthusiasts. Because, I think the blade geometry, the blade shape, the blade grind, the size, the smoothness of action, just the fidgetiness of it. It has these fullers, it has these thumb triangles or tri-way studs, whatever Sean calls them. Just the ergos in hand, very, very melty, very locked in. You can choke up on that forward choil there. Good jimping, that just the blade profile as a whole. I mean, this thing again, checks so many boxes from an enthusiast and functional perspective, I would say. Sorry, I got a lot of tape residue there from cutting open stuff. This is a knife that this would be like, let's say right now I had to sell all but 3 knives. This would be top 1 or 2 to keep. Like, this is not going away. Like right now, it'd probably be these 2, and then the third would kind of be a toss-up, maybe the VCP button lock, but hard decisions to make. But yeah, this is the knife I enjoy carrying outside the house. It's one that I enjoy fidgeting a lot with, and I know that it'll cut through stuff. It's very slicey, very, very good hollow grind. So yeah, this is just, this has been a very revelatory knife for me, I guess you could say. I think this is the first Riot produced knife that I've owned / handled. So, that for what that's worth to people. Yeah. And I mean, aside from how, which sounds dumb, but like aside from how ergonomic and how functional and aesthetically pleasing this knife is, knowing that it was designed by an Asian American guy, I'm Asian American, that means a lot to me because in this hobby, there's not many Asian American designers, makers. So being able to support, Asian American brother it's a cool thing, especially with when he's done, I would say, objectively really good work. So yeah. So all that said, that's kind of my rankings. I guess it was what, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that said, you've noticed that I've pointed out like these 4 knives, especially the VECP button lock, the Unumzon, and the Voodoo, some of my newest acquisitions. These are much larger than I ever thought I would want a knife to be in terms of just for my own EDC. And having now owned and spent a lot of time carrying and using knives of this size, like let's open these just for reference. I think the Unumzon might be the longest out of all of them. I think the VECP button lock is the heaviest out of all of them. But yeah, so these large knives, these are much larger than I would have ever thought. Like, because for reference, the Drift and something size-wise like the Rockwall, like part of the reason that Rockwall was a grail in my mind was because of how compact and utilitarian it was. But yeah, I'm being stupid right now. I'm just afraid to ding a bunch of knives against each other. But yeah, like notice, so like something like the Drift or this Rockwall, these were knives that I thought were optimal size for me. And I thought I would never want, oh gosh, I'm not even in frame. Here we go. There we go. Okay. So yeah, I, for the longest time, I thought knives of this size were the perfect size. I would never need anything bigger. I wouldn't want anything bigger. Anything else would be too heavy and like feel like, yeah, a lead weight in my pocket. But that's just not the case. And I'm glad that's not the case. And I only thought that in theory. I didn't have that based off any real experience because I just never owned and had any real time carrying large knives. So, I mean, these knives are over 5 ounces. I think this just hits the 5 ounce threshold. This is like 4 ounces, I think. For the longest time, I thought, man, if a knife is over 3.5 ounces, it's too heavy. Like, I think this is like 3.7 or 3.8. And I was like, I'll tolerate it. And so, yeah, all that to say, with my recent pickups unintentionally being a lot of large knives, I guess the longer I've owned these, or I guess maybe I had this one first and then I got that one and I got this one. I think it's like with each one that I got, the more convinced I was like, oh yeah, large knives, great. Like fair game. I might enjoy them even more in some respects, because there's a feeling of like real heft, real solidity, just knowing, and yet they're like the functional side of things. Like if you're cutting through big pieces of cardboard, for example, having a longer blade, makes it less likely for you to pull the knife out before you're done cutting, just gives you more functional cutting edge, things like that. So all that to say, I'm waiting on a large knife. I don't think it's technically as long. Actually, it might be about the same length as some of these big boys, but yeah, like I'm just excited to try more big knives. That's not to say that I'll never enjoy small knives again, or yeah, I don't like small knives anymore, but right now I'm just kind of testing the large knife waters and enjoying that for what that's worth. And we'll see, kind of where things land in 2 months, 6 months, whatever it is. Yeah. So I'm glad that I've just kind of unintentionally stumbled into the large knife realm, having previously only wanted like 3-inch blade EDC knives. So yeah, and now I'm excited to have because in terms of MagnaCut users, all the MagnaCut knives I had before were essentially safe queens, knives that I didn't feel comfortable putting heavy use behind because of the rarity and whatnot. And so these, they're rare in some respect, but they're production knives. They're not special editions in any way. So these, I have no qualms about testing, actually using these and finding, experiencing MagnaCut, especially at the heat treat of 63 Rockwell. So yeah, that's been a good thing, and I still have I haven't really gotten a ton of usage out of this blade. I've gotten much more usage out of the Ununzan, but I do want to get more usage out of the Les George, the VCP. Yeah, um, so yeah, I'm trying to think. Is there anything else worth talking about? I don't know. I unfortunately I don't have the funds to just continually buy, especially because the most recent knives I got are some of the most expensive in my collection. So I can't just keep buying new knives. So yeah, these are, especially these guys are, and the Para 3. I don't anticipate the rotation changing a lot in the next month or a few months, but you never know. Yeah. So, let me know which of these knives maybe you own and have been carrying a lot, or what knives you've been carrying a lot lately. Kind of what direction maybe your tastes have trended lately, whether it's going large, going small, going heavy duty, going very gentleman. I don't know. There's kind of a, in a way, kind of a, yeah, I don't know. Other than the large trend for me, I don't know if I've been trending any other directions. So, yeah, all that to say, appreciate you taking the time. Hope you found this interesting or informative, and I'll talk to you later. All right, bye.